Great. So just setting up for everybody over here. Welcome everybody. We're to another Global Education Virtual Expo webinar. We've got an exciting one for you today. A little bit different to what you're used to in looking at all the universities. This one is going to be really important for you, and not just for your students or your parents or your businesses. This one is all about Australia and migrating to Australia. And we've got our lovely partners here from Sydney who are in their evening time. So we want to thank them both for giving up their evenings to present this information. We've got the lovely Michelle and Arnela who run Direct Migration Experts. We've got them on our website as well, and I will be sharing their contact details after this webinar so you can reach out directly or even through us at Global as well. So we've got people from Australia, New Zealand, Southern Africa, all on this webinar, and please put your questions in the chat box or even in the Q&A section, and we'll get to them throughout the presentation. All right, so on that note, Michelle and Arnela, I'll hand it over to you.
Hi everyone, welcome to Global Education's seminar on Australia. Can you see me?
Perfect.
Okay, I've disappeared. Tonight we're going to be speaking about migrating to Australia at Direct Migration Experts. I've been a registered migration agent in Australia for nearly 13 years, and Arnela almost the same. She is also a solicitor as well as a migration agent. We love assisting people like yourselves to make that step and make that move to Australia. Australia offers a lot for everyone, and it's a great place to live. And if you come for the right advice the first time, we hope to make that transition as smooth as possible for you. And yeah, we love what we do. It's not really work for us. We've helped hundreds of people. Arnela's a migrant herself. And so we know what it means to be in your shoes and what it takes to make that step migrating to Australia. Australia has over 90 subclasses of visas. Australian migration law is very complex, and that's where we come in to assist you and make that easier for you. In addition, the law is constantly changing as well. So I think with global education, they focus a lot on student visas. So tonight we'll be speaking to you about student visas, graduate visas, which is post-study in Australia, and general skill migration for those of you that may already have your uni degree and we're considering doing masters in Australia, or even just migrating to Australia with your qualifications and formal work experience as well. So I think Arnela will talk now to you more in detail about student visas and what it means to come to Australia on a student visa.
Thank you for the lovely introduction, both to you, George, and Michelle as well. Well, look, Australia is an amazing country. I'm not saying that only because I live here alongside with George and I guess Michelle ourselves. Having walked in the shoe as a migrant is some experience that one is to share. And if I was to tell you I moved 4 countries before calling Australia home, it is a journey. It is a journey where advice means a lot, where holding someone's hand means, you know, I'm safe, I know where I'm going from here. And I guess taking that step in getting the right education, firstly, you know, getting the right skill set, which may be different from country to country, is a stepping stone. Many of our clients come on student visas. Student visas are quite amazing. It is only not for the sake of studying and getting another degree or requalifying yourself, but rather getting that exposure to the multiculturalism in Australia, to the level of education that we have here. And I think I can confidently say that, and I'm sure George can obviously quite surely, you know, confirm that Australia has one of the best standards of education. Whether you are looking to study engineering, whether you are looking to study architecture, whether you're looking to study nursing or anything alike, we have these options here. The beauty of our country, alongside, I think, similarly to some others, but with the exception of additional benefit it offers, is that when you complete your studies, there is the benefit of getting that work experience. So that's what we call a post-study visa. You may be studying something like a vocational course. So it may be, you know, a length of 2 years, and it may not be at a bachelor degree, so not a university degree. Even then, you have the opportunity to get 2 years work experience, to stay in Australia for another 2 years. Most of our clients that we see, while they are, studying in Australia, start to, break that ceiling, we call it, and get into the workforce and get into what they really like to do. They often meet the people that introduce them to someone else. It's great for networking, especially when you are at a vocational college or, at the university, and you go into that job and you start working as a student 20 hours a week, because that's what you're entitled to while you're studying. And then you do your unlimited hours, some do 80, believe it or not, when they're off study, and you get that experience. It helps you down the track, once you get that post-study visa, after completing your studies, to really look at other opportunities. It may be an opportunity of skilled migration. It may be you might find a partner in Australia. There are many pathways available, and each pathway is quite different from one to the other. What we do get asked quite a lot is, my friend told me, if I finish this degree, I can stay in Australia permanently. I would never say follow a friend's advice, neither Google, by the way. Google often has so many answers for so many things. We often try to self-diagnose ourselves. I've tried that before, actually, and I was quite wrong. In terms of other things, my car is making this noise, what's wrong with it? Oh God, I have to fork out $5,000 to fix it, and there's this pump that needs to be changed. Whereas in fact, the answer is quite simple. That means essentially is getting the right advice, not asking your friend, not asking another colleague, because you don't know the circumstances. Often people don't want to share the personal life, the private, background as how they made the journey to Australia. So what it means with global education, you're in the best of hands to get the right step to education. They give you the amazing counseling to where you can study, what you can achieve, and they always tell you to achieve your dreams. That means follow what you really love to do. There's nothing worse than picking a course that you really don't enjoy and finishing it and saying, well, what am I supposed to do now? Where do I stand at this point? So find something that you love. And if that's what you love, you complete in Australia, you have many more avenues to remain here. Post-study visas are amazing. So like I said, vocational education gives you 2 years extra studies. There is a list that, your particular occupation has to be on that list. It is updated quite frequently. So that means a lot more work for us to keep in track about how things are working and how things are changing. But nevertheless, plan your journey 6 months before you finish your studies. That means get in touch with us. Say, look, I want to know what are my options when I finish this particular degree. Where do I stand from here? Do I have an option to stay in Australia longer? What we do, quite different to many other lawyers and agents, is we look at your case, we say, yes, if we can help you, you have a consultation. If we can't assist you, well, then we say, well, guess what? Finish your studies, and then let's have a look at any other opportunity that you may have. Whether it means getting into masters, and that will allow you perhaps additional avenues, that may be an option. If not, if you have that option of a post-study visa, once again, you need to be prepared. There's a lot of preparation that's in force. You need to at least sit for your English test. And we know with COVID, quite many of our clients are trying to sit English tests, but there are no bookings available. There are a waiting list of 12 to 14 weeks at this present time. So that means really get yourself organized quite early. I know there's a lot of exams happening and studying and putting your head down and thinking, well, how will I manage all of this? Again, a little bit of, advanced planning can make the trick. And I think Michelle can share that with you. It helps a lot of our clients, take the stress away from them. There's nothing worse than coming last minute and say, please save me. I've got, my visa finishing tomorrow. I want to stay here. Often there isn't much opportunity in that particular instance. So getting in touch, getting the advice early is very important. Now, the other thing perhaps I want to share with you as well is that if you are studying at a bachelor degree, which we have many of our clients study as well, you do have extra bonuses. We call them bonuses here. So you may be able to stay up to 4 years in Australia. Why? Because there is a distinction between someone who is an undergraduate, so it means, first initial entry into university, so you've never studied a bachelor degree before, and there is an option for up to 4 years staying in Australia if you already have completed a bachelor degree and you're a postgraduate student. So there are two different, opportunities and options. And again, with that, there is that skilled list. What we are seeing on that skilled list in high demand, really in Australia, and it is, you know, changing from time to time quite a lot, is quite a lot of engineering, quite a lot of architecture, quite a lot in the social work sphere, quite a lot in the medical sector. Not to say the list is well over 300 occupations. So I tell you what, often when I get asked, you know, is my occupation on that list? I'm going to be honest, I don't remember every single one of them. Certainly we go back to that and have a look at that and tell you, yes, you may have an option, or perhaps there may be some other opportunities there itself. What I have obviously also mentioned with our amazing partner, Global Education, is that, again, if you are looking at a pathway to stay here, you often wonder, well, what does it mean for my family? This is the first question we often get asked. What does it mean for my parents who really invested in me going to Australia, getting that medical degree, getting that engineering degree, or whatever it may be that your heart follows? How do I bring them here? I don't want to be by myself here. You know, often there is that question. There are ways, obviously, to bring your family here. There are ways to bring your other siblings, depending on their age here. So there are many opportunities that you can really take and positively exercise and make it happen. The other query that we also get asked quite a lot, and I think George might laugh at this as well as Michelle, is this. What if I don't get my English score? What do I do in this case? Well, let me tell you this, and this is a true story. We have clients from the UK, from Ireland, mind you, it's an English-speaking country. Often they come to Australia. The English is good, mind you, but they have a bit of accent behind them, just like me and many others out there. And they say, well, I can't sit the English test. I'm good at speaking, but my writing is quite, bad. Where do I go from here? Really, I guess the point here is to prepare yourself and practice. In addition to IELTS, which is amazing, and there is many opportunities with IELTS to do general IELTS or academic IELTS, it's really putting your head down, getting a one-on-one tutor, perhaps, getting a one-on-one session, with an IELTS center, and get your head around as to how these exams look like. What we see often is a lot of students sitting 14, 15 IELTS exams and saying, I can't pass because I always get 0.5 on missing out on writing, on reading. And that comes down to really not understanding the concept about what the English exam is about. English, as you are being, obviously, it's a main spoken language in Australia. It is basic English, and often for options like graduate visas or postgraduate visas, I should refer to, you only need general English. There is none of this, writing a Shakespeare, written poem or anything like that. It's a simple, sit your English. It's a basic communication between you and the other person. Again, don't be nervous. They're not going to really examine you on, how you conduct yourself. It's basic understanding about how English works, and I guess that you understanding that this is the minimum level that they are requiring. What they do when you are sitting an English test for the purpose of a postgraduate visa, they do require you at this point of time, and it may change from time to time, to have a minimum of 6 in each of the bands of IELTS. So that means like a general conversation like what I'm presenting to you today alongside with George and Michelle. There isn't that need of using really heavy wording or heavy sentences in when you are really going to respond to a paragraph or write something about perhaps nature or anything that is presented to you. Again, I know many of you may be sitting behind that screen and thinking it sounds all nice and good, but how does it really work? Where can we go from here? And that is where global education, like I said earlier, is amazing in giving you those opportunities where you can choose from different providers. So that may be vocational providers, it may be universities. Often you may ask George, is it really nice in Perth, or should I go to Sydney? Or should I go to Melbourne? Or should I go to Adelaide? They all have, in some ways, pros and cons, depending as to what you're really looking for. Are you looking for studying engineering? It may be a better option to do that in, let's say, in Sydney. Are you looking to, study something like medicine? Adelaide has amazing colleges for medicine. And again, the same may be with Melbourne. And if you have friends that you can relate to, there may be that additional support there as well. So think about, I guess, what it is that you really love and where you want to go from here, and follow that particular dream. Don't ever choose something that it is for the sake of migration, because often many clients, believe it or not, as you know, as I do teach also immigration law, get caught out in this, you know, idea that if I pick this course that is, and you know, this is a very popular one in Australia, Diploma of Leadership in Management, I will become a manager. Now that's nice and great, and it's, you know, probably amazing skills that you learn from that, and you know, and amazing information that you gather, but really doesn't allow you any other pathway moving forward. It means you may have to have another stepping stone into a different category of student visa. And that is where it can become tricky in terms of options that you may have. As we speak, we receive ongoing inquiries from global education. We speak to clients every single day who are looking for, you know, proper, honest advice. And that is what we really stand for. I, as a migrant myself, I know when I migrated to Australia that it was a very, how can I tell you, a very detailed, I guess, journey that we had to take, a journey where we had someone next to us all this time, whether it is through a student visa or a business visa or any of the like, someone who can really share every aspect of that plan and how it is going to work out. The same is obviously for students. I know from global education, when students do graduate, that they get in touch. They want to know, what are my options? Can we stay in touch within this community of global education? You know, build this little network of, you know, other references that you may have or people you may get to know, because before you know it, you may be offered a job and you may know someone else as a student that you're studying with who may be also coming from global education who may need that assistance. So there's a lot more rather than just a student visa, I should say. So it is an amazing opportunity. We are very lucky where we are. I have to say this, you know, every single day compared to many other countries. Now, if you have any questions, as George said earlier, feel free to type in the chat box. Don't feel shy. No question is too small or too big to ask. Please, any questions that you may have, type it in the chat box. If not the chat box, question and answers, and I'm sure I'll do my absolute best, along with Michelle and George, to answer them all for you.
Arnela, when you were speaking there, it resonated with me when you spoke about support. So both me and my brother, who run global education, we were both students in Australia. We both came through as international students. I decided to stay on in Australia. My brother decided to go back to South Africa. And we've been living apart through all this experience, but he has seen what I have gone through in terms of dealing with migration agents through a company that I was working at where we didn't have a choice. We had to use big migration agents. I've also gone through the experience of trying to do it on myself, you know, and going online and Googling online and getting lost in information online. We've also spoken to various other agents, and the reason why, you know, and the reason why we as a business decided that we would love to work with the two of you is because of the honesty in how you present and relating it to how we actually look at things. You know, as a basic consumer that's listening into this presentation, you know, I've got my partner visa, you know, potential family visa to come to Australia, potential business visas. And I don't know what I would do if I had to do this on my own. And I really appreciate, you know, what you said there. It's something I hope students are listening into this. We've got two students that are on the webinar with us that you've reached out to, and I won't mention their names because I know they're a bit shy, but they turned around to us and they said, we finally got someone that can tell us exactly what we need to do, or that we've done something wrong. And to hear that is really important, especially for this industry that we're involved in. So my first question to you both is, what's one thing you wish students would look at first before they even think about looking at their residency visas or skilled visas? While they're studying, what's one thing you recommend for them to do? Or
Michelle, do you want to take a turn?
You mean when they're studying?
Yeah, while they're studying, if they're deciding that they want to stay in Australia and they've got potential employment, but they're not sure on where to go, is it simply just to reach out to you on your website and go from there? What's one piece of advice you can sort of give to them to say, hey, it's okay, start here?
Yeah, the first thing I'd say is what not to do, speak to their friends. Because as Arnela said, everybody's circumstances are different, whether they're a year apart in age or different circumstances. So no one's going to have exactly the same situation. And also migration law is changing. So to ask friends or Google is a mistake. So really start planning ahead. We're happy for them to send us their CV or their basic question, and we'll have a look if we can assist them and how we can assist them and get back to them, rather than panicking and then putting it off, leaving it to last minute, or just getting confused by asking the wrong people.
But what types of information should they get ready in terms, let's say most students who haven't got that work experience, and they might be doing volunteer work and sort of internships, or maybe they've even got part-time work with a potential mining company, like for example in WA. What are some things that they can prepare straight away to present to you to not only make it easier for you as well, but to quicken the process of getting them information? What are things that they should be doing?
I would say if you are a student and you are in Australia and you are working in an industry such as, for example, like what George mentioned, being mining, and you have been working as a student for, let's say, 6 months or 8 months or whatever the time may be, and you really made an amazing impression and the employer wants to keep you, by all means, because they can see you're very hardworking, it means really get in touch with us. Give us the view of what the employer is looking for. Are they looking to sponsor you? Again, that's a big question, because they may be wanting to sponsor you, but are they eligible to do that? That is another big question. Often employers just believe by having someone who has the right skill sets, that's enough to start the employment process and the employment work visa. There are many other underlying, I guess, preparation factors that need to be taken into account. One being, how many hours can you work? When could you really transition from this student visa into the employment visa? Are you likely at breaching your student visa conditions, which is something you would like to avoid by all means? Many students get confused thinking that if I have stopped studying, I can simply go and work full time and just do that and do nothing else because I still have 4 or 5 months left on my student visa. Actually, that may not be right. So you need to really understand where you are with, I guess, your employment, whether it's new or continuing. And if you are coming in the last 6 months of finishing your study, get in touch. We are happy to speak to your employer. Michelle is amazing with dealing with employer-sponsored visas. She gets them approved very quickly, to be quite frank. They take normally 30 days to be approved, but she does some magic. I don't know what it is exactly. She just does amazing work, by the way. And she gets them approved within 24 hours. That means getting a decision-ready application. Our clients, whether they're small clients or larger corporate clients, we deal with them with the same. That means you get one-on-one service. It means we give you all the requirements of what we need from you. It also means that we only lodge applications that are decision ready. I refuse, and I make my clients often, give them a hard time that I won't lodge an application along with Michelle unless it is 100% correct. That means we have all the necessary documentation, all the necessary information, and then we proceed to lodge. I know it is often maybe perhaps, causing some delays to get the visa, but that means if we lodge applications that don't have all of the information, you may run into a risk of a refusal. That then creates further hurdles and really stops you of pursuing the dream, whether it's getting permanent residency out of that employer or any other means. A very common question we get asked, particularly for students, I think, that are currently studying or close to the end of studying, is that, okay, I'm working for the employer 20 hours a week. Now I'm finishing studying. Can I work longer hours? Can I work full time for that employer? Is that something I just write an email to immigration and say, hey, they need me. Here is the letter from the employer saying, we really need you. We can't find local staff. That means Australian citizen or permanent resident. Well, that's exactly not enough. There are particular forms and procedures involved when it comes to applying for additional work rights. You need to be in a certain category of eligible workers to be able to do that. Now that often can take some time to prepare because it has to be done in a particular manner. To say lawyers are pedantic, let me tell you, immigration is quite pedantic when it comes to what has to be on a particular form, how a particular form has to look like, what the date is on the form. We experienced that, I think, Michelle, about a couple of days ago, where I have been told, well, we're not in 2020 anymore. I know that you probably meant 2021. So you go back and fix up the one instead of 2020 at the end of the form. So, you know, they're quite pedantic to look at, you know, what you put on the form, from the dates to the actual information that is involved. So I would say get yourself prepared, make your life easier, take the stress away from yourself, get in touch with us. Just say, hey, look, I want to reach out. You can do that through George, you know, by contacting Global Education. He will pass on the details, give us a small summary. We'll review that in detail at no cost initially and say, yes, if we can help you, we'll get in touch and say, we need to have a consultation. There is a fee payable because it is legal advice we provide. And then you can make your decision to start. Often starting as soon as you can really saves a lot of heartache, I think, and a lot of time for many particular individuals, if I put it this way.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want to look at the stress that they can put you through, just look at the top of my head. So totally worth speaking.
Hey. Absolutely.
I've got a question for you here that it keeps getting asked to our team in South Africa. And this is mainly coming from graduate students, is what's the difference between a regional sponsored visa and a sponsored visa? Like, I'm presuming they're talking about the 457 visas that were the company sponsored visas that were going on years ago. Could you give a little bit of an explanation of the difference between skilled nomination, regional, and sort of the sponsored visas? I think that'll help everybody on this presentation.
Sure. Perhaps, Michelle, you might start off with your favorite, which is the employer-sponsored. And
so the employer-sponsored visa is a temporary visa, and the subclass is 482. So that's a temporary visa. So there's two occupation lists: the short-term occupations and the medium to long-term. So the medium to long-term occupations are the occupations at the moment that lead you to permanent residency. However, when holding the 482 for anyone, it is a temporary visa, and which means you'll get a visa between 2 years if your occupation's on the short-term list, and for up to 4 years if your occupation's on the medium to long-term. Part of the requirement when you hold the visa is that you have to work for the employer that nominated you and sponsored you. We often meet people, especially last year during coronavirus, that were let go of their employment and they only have a certain amount of time to find a new employer as well. So you are obligated to work for your employer and not have any other job. So you have to really like what you do and where you work, because that is your visa. It is a good visa for many people who don't have the opportunity to obtain their permanent residency. It gives them an opportunity to gain new skills, work in Australia and experience a different country and a new life. If you are sponsored outside of Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane on the 482 and you come here with your family, in some places in regional Australia you can have, like, your children, for example, get free government education as well. However, in capital cities like Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane, that's not the case. But yeah, so that's the 482, that's employer sponsored visa. And obviously there's requirements for the employer. They've got to be an approved sponsor, meaning that they run a legitimate business and that they are functioning business and they're operating hopefully in profit, and then nominate the role. And this has to be done by the employer to show that the position wasn't created for the purpose of sponsoring you, that there is a demand and they couldn't find anybody locally to fulfill that position. And with the sponsor visa, sometimes it is a requirement if you don't have formal qualifications, or depending on the occupation. I can't go through them all, but because there's over 500, you do require to have formal qualifications or at least 2 years work experience as well.
Yeah.
Full time. So a lot of students say, but I worked 3 years part-time. So unfortunately the part-time, it doesn't equal to full-time. So I think, Arnela, is this right? 6 months part-time?
Yes. It's 3 months full-time.
3 months
Yes.
full-time, yeah. So yeah, you just have to halve it. So yeah, but you would need to check with us to see if you're eligible for the visa, because we wouldn't want to go to the trouble to get the sponsorship nomination and then look at your CV and say, sorry, you're not eligible for the visa, because things are
And
expensive
that's great.
as well.
That's really good information. That's really good. And it goes in line with what you both have been saying is, you need to be as prepared as possible, especially when it comes to finding an employer that maybe your skills not on that list, but if you've proven yourself to them and there are a growing entity, it might be an option for you.
Absolutely.
But as you said, there's 500 different options that are there. You can't do it yourself. And my first instinct is direct migration. Speak straight away. Speak to Michelle. She'll help you with this. So I do. Arnela, what's the skilled side of it?
Well, the skill side is an amazing opportunity. Look, while I support the option of employer-sponsored visas, often that leaves, some of the individuals in a bit of a limbo. Let's be honest, COVID-19 is around. It's going to stay around for a little while. And that often means business structures may change, businesses may let go of staff, or may change hours, which can obviously cause some bit of a havoc with your visa requirements and conditions. Often the conditions are that you need to work 38 hours a week. Now, some concessions had been made that the employers could change, the actual hours, but that has become quite messy, where you need to seek legal advice from an employment lawyer, whether it's in line with fair work requirements. So obviously a lot more add-on. The preferred option, if you can get permanent residency without an employer, why not? There is no stress of having to worry that, hey, will I have a job in a month, in a year, in 2 years? Having an option to go through the skilled migration, whether it's the regional pathway where you stay in the regional area for 3 years and thereafter have guaranteed, essentially, option to permanent residency, why not? Adelaide is beautiful. I was there not long ago. So is most other parts of Australia. Like Gold Coast is, believe it or not, considered a regional area. There are amazing parts of Australia where you can really, settle in, be able to afford some decent housing as compared to Sydney and some of the major, metropolitan areas, and where you can also find good employment. The beauty about, I guess, going skilled migration, whether it's initially permanent or whether you're going to look at something initially temporary in, let's say, regional areas that then convert to permanent residency after 3 years of living in a regional postcode, which means if you say, I will go to South Australia, and you get approved for that, and you say, well, it's a little bit too quiet for me. I really like my coffees at Burke Street. I really want to, I like my coffees in Gold Coast. I really have found some employment there. There is some work happening. There's some action happening. The beach is there. It's beautiful climate. I want to get away from this cold weather. Guess what? Checking out the postcodes is important. That means you can move between regional postcodes. You're not bound to stay in the one particular area. That also means getting legal advice, because these postcodes get updated. We are getting advice, and I don't like to open my email sometimes, that every 6 months there is an advice given by the Department of Education and Employment, where the list is changing. So that means the skilled occupation list may change, as well as what some of the regional areas are still, consisting of. Do they change? How many, acceptances are taking in through, let's say, South Australia, or let's say, Brisbane or anywhere else? Often clients ask us that first question, where should I live? Students, they come and say, where should I live? I really like to know where should I go and live? Well, the question is, where are you eligible to live? Where are you eligible to, lodge for that skilled visa? There is opportunities to lodge something which we call a skilled independent visa, which means if you lodge the visa, get the amazing high mark that you need, you can live anywhere in Australia. However, if you want to go through a particular state, so being sponsored by a state, you need to be living in that state. There isn't that opportunity to swap from one state to the other.
If you're in Australia.
To add a bit of a twist to this, often clients, and I should say students, believe, okay, my occupation is on the skilled occupation list. I saw it on Google, it said so. I know I live in this state, which is amazing. But guess what? One little thing that they often forget to mention is that you need to have a skill assessment. So that means having your work experience and your qualification recognized in Australia. That is the hardest part of the job. That means having the right advice, someone who can guide you through that. To give you an example, we assist managers from South Africa, we assist doctors from South Africa, even solicitors who are coming to, to Australia. There's a different process for each occupation. Just to add a bit of a twist, each occupation has a different assessment authority. They have different requirements. Michelle is nodding because she doesn't like to go through that process. It is a nitty-gritty. I, on the other hand, maybe because I'm a lawyer, I love to do that. Why? I challenge myself and I say, can I go against the processing time? They say, give me 6 to 8 weeks and I get back to you. And I think to myself, well, you need to get back to me a bit quicker. And believe it or not, often we get results within 4 or 5 days. Some are
2
taking
days
10,
last time.
3 days. And why? It's because we make sure we have the application intact with everything that they need, paragraphing, particularly, engineers I've seen in the recent months, they're so pedantic. Engineering authority that, qualifies engineers and checks the occupation. If I was to tell you, they look at paragraphs where they're aligned in the A4 paper, are they out of text? If they're out of text, they go back and say, do it again. So it is a lot more. And I guess what has to be in a particular application, not only your qualification, but also your work experience and how you present that work experience. So you need to have that first as a mandatory thing and positively assessed before you can consider skilled migration. That can take some time, depending on how quickly you can get some documents, but certainly that is the #1 step. What we do see a lot of students saying is that, hey, I lodged my expression of interest for the visa, but I haven't heard for a year what's happening. And I say, really? That's quite unusual because we've seen clients, nurses, engineers, chefs, electricians, getting invitations. They say, do you mind having a consultation with me? Would you be able to check? And when we check, it is quite disheartening that, often friends say, go online and do this, you can do it on your own. They get things wrong. And when you get things wrong, you catch the eye of immigration. And it means putting in incorrect information becomes a big problem down the track. So getting proper advice will save you a lot of heartache down the track. I'm sure George can obviously confirm that one little thing that can, be put in a student visa or any type of skill visa application, they all have to match because there is that option to do data matching. If you ask me which is the preferred option, I always say above employment visa, if you have secure employment, take it, but work on your permanent residency alongside. Nothing stops you doing that. Absolutely nothing. Our clients that are on the 482 are preparing the skill assessments, completing the English exams, and they are lodging the expression of interest to get the permanent residency. The only thing you have to do is wait. And now the waiting period is anywhere between 6 to 12 months, which means in the event that you may be let go of employment, you have a backup plan. It's important to have one, I think, during COVID more than ever. I know George likes Perth, but I prefer Sydney and Adelaide, particularly Adelaide. If you want to start off somewhere where you love to enjoy a beautiful coffee, get started, it is an option. And Adelaide gives the quickest invitations, believe it or not, George, for regional visas. Within a heartbeat, within 78 hours, it's crazy how quickly they issue these invitations. Why? Because they need people in that particular regional state. Many call it the retirement village. I think that's what it's been, I guess, known for. It has its beautiful places, and it is quite similar to South Africa. It has the opportunity to really take it easy rather than continuously run. And if it means you put a sacrifice to live in a beautiful place that you get to know for 3 years and get permanent residency, why not? Take it. Some people don't have that particular option. Absolutely, that's what I always do recommend.
I've got really, just, I'm looking at myself here in this mirror and looking at the both of you, and I'm thinking what I would have done if I had met you 10 years ago, just in terms of
I know. I don't know if I would know everything 10 years ago like now.
I can't recommend this enough to students. We've got a couple of questions here, and one person did raise their hand, Prudencio. So if you do want to speak, just raise your hand and we'll put you live and you can have a chat with us directly. But one of the questions that's on here is from an anonymous person. I'm not sure if this one's going to make sense. Is it possible for a particular job to move between the short and medium-term lists for the 482 visa?
Anything's possible. Well, we did see that happen with Cook. It moved from the long-term to the short-term list. However, usually if you already actually hold the visa and you move in the negative, well, we can call it the negative way from the long-term to the short-term, like the Cook, there may be provisions where you are grandfathered by the old rules because prior to them changing the rule, you held the visa prior to that. So they do grandfather, which happened before, which meant people that were sponsored as cooks, and if they held the visa, I think it was before April 2018, then they were permitted to obtain their permanent residency afterwards. But like that's what normally happens with all immigration. If they change the rules, but you've already lodged or you already hold the visa, it is likely that you will go under the old rules.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
If I'm understanding this question, perhaps it's myself reading it, saying, is it possible for a particular job to move between short and medium term list for the 482 visa? The way I am understanding this, and maybe I'm wrong, is to say that if I have an occupation and that's on a short term list, can I down the track change that name of that occupation to medium term list? If that's the question that you have, guess what? I might have an answer for you, but you got to get in touch with us. Often you can, depending what your occupation is. Now we have situations where clients, or I should say, people that are contacting us have overlapping duties. And that means we're spending 6 hours of our time trying to really figure out what it is that you really do every day. How does it fall in line with, I guess, the end scope of that particular occupation? What is the unit of that occupation? What is the umbrella holding that? And the sub umbrellas, which means, really getting into the nitty gritty of things. There may be provisions that you can do that, but you got to be careful of how you do that. Now that comes down to what documents you provided to the department in the past. Are they going to be in line with changing that occupation title essentially, down the track? Will it fall in line with any other requirements? And there is a lot of policy that we have to follow and regulations. It can be done, but it's a lengthy process. Let me be honest. But certainly there may be that opportunity to do that.
No, great. I've got a nursing student that we've passed on your details, and I think it might be interesting to talk about nursing and sort of, especially with COVID and sort of the whole world sort of identifying that biotechnology, the allied healths, and all the health services is a very critical nature to all of us. Are there any updates that you can share, or if you do know about nursing and the medical world in terms of visas in Australia, or would you recommend that they speak to you directly in person? If you've got anything to share, it's me creeping for some information.
Well, I'm trying to think of it. Oh God, we are getting quite a lot of updates every single day from the Department of Home Affairs. What I can tell you, if you're in the medical sector, you're lucky. It's like you won a jackpot, because that is something that we essentially need in Australia. And for that, there is the term given, essential workers. Now, whether you're a nurse or a radiographer, general practitioner, specialist, you are given priority, which means if you are going through an employer-sponsored visa, it gets processed quicker, as opposed to following the standard pathway. Now, to say the least, there may be many other updates that may be following. And I think for that, we really need to have a look at the CV and the experience, and whether you've completed education in Australia, which is a bonus in that case. Where you are with your experience, what you've gathered at the same time while studying. We do see often clients going into support workers, aged care workers, and then working into nursing. Again, there are many opportunities in terms of different visas. And as you said earlier, Michelle, 99 visas, which means really a lot of opportunity out there. Finding the right one for you means for us to understand where you're at with, I guess, with life in general, and with your studies, whether you've met all the requirements for your studies, how much time you have to entertain any particular visa, what any other underlying issues are. Do you have any partners on your visa who have a particular occupation? That may help you as well. So, but most definitely for medical, sector workers, there is a lot of concessions that are given, whether it's coming from offshore, whether it's, applying from here. in Australia, they are given a lot of concessions to make it happen much quicker.
Yeah, no, great. I've got a question here from Prudence, but I might answer it myself. But we'll probably have a discussion on this one as well. They're talking about the difficulties in studying in Australia. And this is something that I recommend, Prudence, that you get in touch with us at Global, because the counseling service that Global offers you is really assessing what you want your outcomes to be. We're giving you options throughout Australia. Are you more inclined to a Durban lifestyle or a Joburg lifestyle? What I mean by that, Durban, you most likely will fit well in a Perth lifestyle. You're by the beach, you're in a little bit more of a quiet area, or the contentious Sydney that we both love and me and Arnela always joke about. If you're from Joburg, you'll fall in love with Sydney. You've got this green, vibrant lifestyle. But then you've got to drive into it and you've got to look at the applications. You've got to look at what you study, the types of courses, your lecturers, the networking opportunities. And these are all discussions that we can help you sort of assess the difficulty in studying in Australia. But to be really frank with you, it's one of the easiest places to study. International students are focused here in Australia. There's a lot of negative news in the media in terms of international education in Australia. But if you speak directly with the universities, directly with partners like us, you'll see that there's a lot of support for international students, especially in Australia. You have to also remember that Australian students pay 4 times to 3 times higher prices than the average local student in Australia. So there's also that incentive from the university to look after you. Now, this presentation that we're having for you today is really giving you the idea of what to focus on post your studies. And we think that's just as important before you even choose Australia, to identify that. And that's why these presentations with direct migration are a huge asset for you as well. So please reach out to me and I'll get you in touch with Arnela and Michelle, and you can find a little bit more about what you'd like to study. So I'll think we'll leave that question for now. But on that, I've got another question from the team in Joburg who just texted me here. They've got a student that has family with them, but the husband is going to be the one who's studying in Perth. Now that family is a family of 3 kids, a mother and a father. Is the wife allowed to work in Australia? And what is the legalities of her rights in Australia if they were to come on the student visa? I think we always get this question.
Sure. Look, in terms of, I guess, rights to work, it's an important question that often many students do ask. And I guess what you have to look at is first, is that particular student going to study a bachelor degree? Are they going to study master's or PhD? There are differences. Now, the differences are, if you are going to study a bachelor degree, that means your spouse can only commence working legally in Australia after you have commenced the study. And that means 20 hours a week. Now, why? Because that's in line with your own conditions. Now, when it comes to PhD and master's students, because they're obviously spending essentially a lot more money and a lot more time in the thesis, in the research, and that is quite expensive exercise, to find someone to supervise you for that, you do have that option to work full time. Now, in line with that, it also means, again, it only starts when the person commences with a particular thesis or the master's study. Not to forget, there is obviously that option to always have to pay for that particular, children attending their education as per such. So it means having the children attending the education by all means paying full time, and I guess international fees as per se for that.
Yeah. No, great. Thank you for that. And I'll relay that with the team who's just asked that question. It's amazing how there's so many intricacies with, not just your visa, but your partner's visas as well. But on that note, I think we've covered more than we should have in this webinar. So I really thank you for giving us all these insights. I know that it's very time consuming for you both as well. And it's the nature of the industry is constantly evolving. But we've got the final question, and this question we're all sick of hearing about COVID. What's what's the update, and can you give us an update in terms of when's Australia potentially going to open its borders, and what's going on? I know that we're all sick of these questions, but I think for this recording would be great if we could have just a snippet of information, or even we just don't know.
Well, it's very hard to say at the moment. They are talking, well, look, even with the restrictions and the border closures, we have got people visas, and followed by the visa and exemption to travel, which means we've got even granted from South Africa in 24 hours. It's just a matter of them being able to get a flight and having to pay the quarantine, which is 10 days, or no, sorry, is it 2 weeks or 10 days in the hotel for a few $1,000s. So it's the hardest part the clients are having is to actually get a flight here. It's not a matter of if the borders are open or not. It's about getting a flight if we get them the exemption to travel.
Yeah.
So they're definitely still accepting visa applications, and they are giving waivers and exemptions to travel. However, it's just trying to get a flight or being able to afford a flight.
Yeah, for sure. And it's good to know that as well. I think from our point of view, the student visas, universities are giving letter of offers out, which the COE, which you need to use to apply for your visa. But most of the students that are coming to Australia are all studying abroad, and they're all studying online, or they're going via Dubai. So, for example, we represent 3 universities that you can actually go now and study in Dubai, and that visa will still count towards your skills at the end. And I think that's something that we should make students be aware of is, hey, even if you start studying online while you're in South Africa or anywhere in the world, that still counts towards your potential skills at the end, your potential residency visa at the end. Why has Australia done that? And is that because of the COVID? And what can we do to help students understand their options? Is it a case of just getting them in touch with you directly? Where can students find out what's going on?
They can just get in touch with you or us directly, either or. It's up to you, whatever.
Yeah.
We're going to give everyone our email address.
Yeah. So after this webinar, everybody will get an email from us directly with information. We're also going to provide them the video of you two in Sydney as well, so they can see a little bit of Sydney, a little bit more of yourselves as well. And will be all your contact details there. I do recommend that you contact Global first if you're looking at student visa options first. Have that conversation with us, and then if there is that issue for residency visas or personal issues in terms of family migration or business migration, we'll gladly get them in touch directly with you. But in terms of COVID, please, everybody, be safe. Australia, it will be opening soon. It's a phenomenal place, and just I haven't worn a mask by 5 days in Perth. I know you both are jealous of that, but literally it was only 5 days of wearing a mask.
I think I've worn a mask like once during the whole year.
Yeah.
Well, I've worn one on the aeroplane coming back from Adelaide today, and to be quite frank, it's something quite unusual. But it is not as bad as what it is perhaps on anywhere else.
You don't have any cases.
Absolutely, absolutely. Look, I think we're all quite safe on that in terms of and what has been happening. Like George said, please stay safe. And remember, Australia is still accepting everyone. Everyone is still welcome to apply for visas. Visas are still granted. Clients are still coming all the way from the US, mind you, which is the hub, let's be honest, of what's happening in terms of COVID. So you just got to do the right thing, have the COVID test, be safe, obviously follow the government instructions. And I think it's fair to say you'll be able to enter Australia.
Brilliant. Well, on that note, thank you both very much for your time.
Thanks, George.
I think we can end it over here, and we'll be in touch ourselves. And to everybody, keep safe, and we'll see you on the next webinar.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
have
George.
a lovely evening.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Raf. Thanks for joining. Appreciate the message, mate.